Let's design and draw a D&D dungeon. Alright, so I'm in my studio here at the Shred Quarters, working away on my custom Dungeons & Dragons city adventure campaign book thing. I want the adventure to have a low level, like entry level dungeon that the characters can get into right away, like level 1 dungeon, something that's playable in a session or maybe 2, real short, quick level 1 dungeon. And I thought it would be fun to bring you along on my process for designing this kind of dungeon and actually drawing the dungeon so we can print it out and play on it and eventually have it in the book that I'm creating, all based around this city and all the NPCs and stuff. Alright, let's get into designing this dungeon. So the first thing we need are some tools. I have my trusty pencil and eraser here. We're going to be using some different size micron pens, so I have a small and a fine tip here. Some whiteout for mistakes, and then the most important thing is some graph paper. There's two important things to remember. The first thing is this 4x4 grid. We're gonna treat each 1/4 of an inch square like it's an inch, so we can blow up the map 400% later and have it be actual size for miniatures. The other thing is this non-reproducible blue lines. So on the graph paper here, you can see the lines are this light blue. When you scan it in, you can make some quick adjustments, and the grid lines will actually disappear, which is what we're gonna want in the end. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is plan out this dungeon. So I'm making a level 1 dungeon, and the story behind this dungeon is there's this group of fish people. They're sort of brainwashed by this giant hermit crab that wants to eat magical items. So, you know, maybe the players are going to put a stop to it. Maybe they're going because they heard about a magical item that was stolen by the fish people and they want to retrieve it. Lots of reasons to go to this place and fight some fish people. Because this is a low level, like level 1 dungeon, I want people to be able to run through it in like one session, really. I know that it needs to have a few things, so, you know, maybe a couple of enemy encounters, a trap, some treasure, and the boss encounter. Nothing too crazy, you know, level 1 dungeon, want to be able to run through it in one session. So with all that in my head, I'm going to jump into my notebook, do some planning, and show you what I come up with. Alright, so here is my page of notes. Basically everything up top here are false starts. You know, I was thinking it could be an island with, you know, all of this stuff on top, and then I started thinking about a cave and a whole system of traps and everything. But then once I came up with this outline, this really helped me solidify exactly what I needed to do. And then I just made circles and connections from each room, and then wrote notes off to the side of what each place was going to be. Then I came back and fleshed it out a little bit, but really this is the dungeon. So it's kind of scribbly and hard to look at, but it's a good enough plan for me to start drawing from. So let's move on to the next step and start actually drawing this dungeon out. Alright, so the first step here is I'm going to take my pencil, I'm just going to lightly draw out the sort of exterior walls of the rooms to figure out the size of the dungeon. So each square on the graph paper is equal to this 1-inch miniature. So the base of the miniature is 1 inch by 1 inch, so that will equal one of these 1/4 inch squares on the graph paper. So knowing that, I'm just going to start sketching out the rooms, just the exteriors and maybe how each of the rooms connects. I'm not getting too into the details of anything yet. Just gonna plan out how big each room is and how each room connects to one another. Alright, so it's a little tricky to see, but I've just lightly drawn each room, how they connect. I'm not worrying about any of the interior details or adding any texture or anything, just the logistics of how the rooms and the dungeons are laid out. So now I want to talk a little bit about my drawing inspiration for how I'm going to render this dungeon. So there's a Dungeons and Dragons map maker named Dyson Logos, and I just love their maps. They have this sort of old school feel, hand drawn, like you can tell it's actually drawn by the person who's planning out the map and everything, but they're also super practical and useful, really easy to look at and know exactly what's going on. I'll put a link to their website where they have tons and tons of free maps to use. Also, some of their maps have been in the new official Dungeons and Dragons books, like this Dragon Heist book. Super cool stuff. Definitely go check it out. Now it is time to get to inking this map and making it look awesome. Alright, so I'm starting with my fine point Faber-Castell artist pen, and I'm just drawing the outlines of the rooms, putting in a few details here and there, but I'm sticking to pretty much just the outer walls of the caverns. Once I have the basics in, I'm going to erase all of the pencil lines to sort of clean it up before adding any more details. Alright, now comes the fun part. I'm just using my smaller size S Faber-Castell Pitt artist pens to add in all the little features to the dungeon. So a trapdoor with a slide that goes into this garbage pit area. There's stairs leading down. There's barrels and beds, water, and this sort of dock area. The waterfall in the back. It's all about adding in each little element that sort of helps explain what these caverns are used for, but also how the characters will be able to interact on it as a battle map. Alright, for this next step, I'm going to be adding in the floor details. I'm still using my small micron here. Since we want to erase the blue grid of the graph paper, I'm just going to follow the graph lines and render in the grid on the map so this can be blown up and used as an actual battle map. Alright, things are getting a little busy, so I'm going to go back around the very outside edge of the map using the thicker pen. Just add another layer of ink around the outside to sort of thicken up the walls of these caverns, help contain some of this detail in the page. Now is the time to add the final touch to this map and really make everything pop. I'm going to take my small tipped pen and make this little texture that goes around the outside of the map. This is to sort of contain the map and give it that old school feel. It just makes everything pop and feel really awesome, hand-drawn, classic dungeon map. So all I'm doing is making 3 little lines and then rotating, making 3 more little lines, sometimes 4, sometimes 5, sometimes 2. The key to this is to not make a straight perpendicular pattern. So if you do 3 horizontal lines and then 3 vertical lines and then 3 more horizontal, it'll still look awesome, but it'll be a little rigid looking. So what I do is I sort of rotate the lines a little bit so they're not going in the same direction, but they're not quite perpendicular. This part is so crazy tedious, but it's also kind of meditative and fun at the same time. So I would suggest, practicing a little bit. Get out another sheet of the graph paper, practice doing the dashes, get them going in different directions, and then also trying to keep groups of 3 or 4 lines around the same size. So you don't want to make them too much bigger or smaller. You want to keep them all around the same size. And our dungeon map is drawn. As you can see, well, I don't know, maybe you can't see, but it's dark outside now. The whole thing took me about 2.5, 3 hours to draw. But I think the really cool thing about drawing these maps is it only takes a little bit of imagination, some planning, and some graph paper to draw these. You don't have to be a super proficient or skilled illustrator. You know, it just takes a little bit of time and a little bit of planning to figure out a map. There's no like complicated drawing or any of that with this stuff. It's really straightforward. Anybody can do it. Just use your imagination and you can come up with all kinds of awesome dungeons and places for adventurers to explore and have an awesome time with your D&D group. Okay, from this point you can scan your map, take it into Photoshop or some other image editing software, blow it up ×4 because on the graph paper is 1/4 of an inch and we want to make each square an inch so they fit the little 1-inch miniatures perfectly per square. Divide each section of the map into its own sheet of paper, like into its own 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. Print those out individually and then you can just lay them on top of each other as your adventuring party explores the map. Alright, I hope this was helpful and will inspire you to create your own maps and dungeons for your own D&D game. To get started, it really doesn't take much, you know, and if you don't feel confident drawing miniatures and monsters like I have in past videos, this would be a great way to start making your own custom artwork and resources for your own D&D game. So I'm just so in love with Dungeons & Dragons, so in love with creating stuff for my players. This is going to be the first dungeon in my book of my guide to Port Vela, the city filled with NPCs that I created. It'll be a book, it'll be a downloadable PDF with this dungeon included. There's still a lot of work left for that, so I'm actually going to put a link down in the description below where you can download this dungeon and use it for yourself if you want to use it for your game. It'll be a really nice starter dungeon, you know, for level 1 characters. I think it'll be really cool. Also, definitely check out Dyson Logos. I'm putting their link below as well. They have all kinds of different maps that are free, all free. It's crazy. All right, if you have any questions, leave a comment. Thanks so much for checking this out. I super appreciate it, and I can't wait to create some more D&D stuff for this channel. So until then, I'll see you next time.